Hey guys, hope you're well. I'm reporting to you from the Los Angeles Courthouse to give you a rundown, it's not over yet, of Streets LA potential TRO, temporary restraining order, filed on behalf of Mr. Eckers, of Joey Eckers. He's trying to get a TRO against William Gude, Streets LA. So the battle is not done. There was some action yesterday as well as some action today, and we're currently in a recess where we're expected to reconvene in about an hour from now. So by the time this video is posted, we'll probably be in the thick of part 4 of this trial. So wanted to give you first a rundown of what I saw yesterday very quickly, and a rundown of what I saw today. So yesterday, Mr. Eckers, my apologies. Mr. Eckers says he's been consistently harassed to the point by William Gude, to the point where trauma has been inflicted upon him. Mr. Eckers testified that he had multiple panic attacks, that as a result of Mr. Gude's harassment, he at least has a couple of panic attacks a week, and that it has seriously damaged his reputation and his opinions amongst his colleagues and his friends as to how they perceive him, and that has caused massive damage to his life, and that he protects his reputation. He gave a bunch of specific examples about how William was hostile to him, how he inflicted trauma upon him. One of the fascinating facets that Mr. Eckers presented to the court, and it's interesting because when you're watching Joey speak, he tends to go on these quasi-monologues when he addresses the court. He'll try to pack as much detail and information as he can in his little time that he has to respond to the court. So one of the bizarre facets of this abuse that he says is he felt threatened by one of William Gude's followers who is dressed, he's a British guy who was dressed in a Manchester United jersey. And he noted that he felt threatened because the most aggressive and hostile sports fans in the world are Manchester United fans, and that wearing this Manchester United jersey was this signal to him that he would be harassed, that it was to sort of imply that they will do the evil things that Manchester United fans usually do out in Great Britain. Now, I will say, if anybody knows anything about soccer, Manchester United fans are aggressive, although I don't think they have much relevancy in terms of this specific case. In terms of today, what happened? It was interesting. The biggest bombshell that William's very effective attorney was able to reveal is that Mr. Eckers has his legal fees being paid by Scientology. They did not want to get into that. His side wanted to say that that was irrelevant. They didn't want that question to be answered as to whether or not his legal bills were being funded by Scientology. But William Gude's attorney pushed back hard, and after some back and forth, he was forced to reveal that Scientology is paying for his attorney's fees. Now, here's the interesting part that you have to realize about Joey, Mr. Joey Eckers. Joey is not a Sea Org member. He did not work at any of the Ideal Orgs or centers or Celebrity Center or anything like that. So he wants to try to keep his hands clean and say that he was simply a citizen who is a victim of William Gude's abuse. Of course, the reason that this happens is because Scientology feels like they'd have more credibility with bringing in some random Joe who says he's also been harassed by these people, and it would make their claim more credible. Now, Eckers has claimed that he has no association with Scientology, that he's never been in Scientology, but that it has done some good things for him. He was forced to admit that, and that he has friends in Scientology. So the team for Mr. Eckers was not happy that had to be revealed, but of course that gets the judge thinking in a way where she wasn't thinking before, versus is this just kind of part of a bigger plot? And of course the bigger plot would be if Scientology can't actually arrest these protesters because they are essentially peacefully protesting, what they could do is they could pick off each person one by one. They could create that restraining order against Danny, so Danny can't show up to the big blue building. They could create that now restraining order against Streets, so Streets cannot show up. You think of DOA as well. So all of these people, the way that Scientology is trying to quell these protests, and this is an indicator that these protests are working, because Scientology is spending up the wazoo on their legal fees to create all these restraining orders. And it's interesting because in the midst of these restraining orders, discovery comes out, detail comes out that makes them even look worse. So the advocates against these protesters are really jumping into a hornet's nest, and all of this might end up with more egg in their face than they even had before. This whole thing might completely backfire, but that's the goal, right? Any notable protester, they're just going to create that restraining order and find the littlest scant amount of evidence, and if nothing else, they're going to try to tie everybody up in court. So obviously with this case, they don't have too much of a leg to stand on, because Scientology, it has been revealed that Scientology has been paying their legal fees. Let's talk about some of the witness testimony. Jessica Palma-Dessa did a great job. She testified as a witness as to what happened, because some of this, the backstory with this story is that at a holiday party, Mr. Eckers got arrested because he swatted William Gude's phone out from his hands and acted in a very aggressive manner. So all of this goes back to this holiday party back in December. Jessica Palma-Dessa testified. She testified as that she noted that Mr. Eckers, which is important to testify, seemed consistently aggressive, and that he had seemed to essentially go out of his way to insert himself in the Scientology protests and in conversations with these protesters. Another interesting thing about the harassment that Jessica very successfully dispelled. Mr. Eckers, and fellow dog lovers, we know that when we ever bring dogs into the conversations, our hearts are compromised. So Mr. Eckers tried to claim that there was a concerted effort to get his dog taken away from him. Jessica was able to confirm that that was not the case, and there were very specific questions being asked about the dog. Did Jessica ever call animal control? No, Jessica testified with confidence. Did Jessica ever post to ask anybody else to call animal control to get this guy's dog taken away? The answer was no. Did Jessica even muse on public live stream, on video, on recording, that this dog should be taken away, or that she's thinking about wanting to take away this dog? The answer, again, no, no, no. So it's a fascinating thing, because this whole TRO, usually a restraining order would be based perhaps on one or two singular significant events. But what Mr. Eckers is trying to prove is a pattern of harassment. The problem is his claims that there's been harassment. The harassment isn't that tangible, and of course, in a case about a restraining order, this isn't a lawsuit. So you don't need to prove tangible damages, but it certainly helps in terms of a case like this. It doesn't seem like that Mr. Eckers received any tangible damages as a result of this harassment. Now, of course, he says he claims the panic attacks, the emotional distress. Now, he did something today where he tried to strengthen the argument, or I think that was his attempt to strengthen that argument. What just happened about 20 minutes ago is Mr. Eckers came close to passing out. He was short of breath. He got the bailiff and some other members of the court to assess his health. He was essentially slumping down on a bench, in between the bench and the floor, because he didn't have enough strength to get up. And keep in mind that Mr. Eckers has created this image of him being very frail. He came into the courtroom with a walker, looking as potentially frail as he could possibly be. So I think he wants to create this image that he's this frail old man. And something that I forgot to mention, that's important to mention, is this specific restraining order is based on elder abuse. So he's claiming that William has specifically committed elder abuse against him. Now, of course, what do you want to do to win that case? You want to come off as elderly and as disenfranchised as possible. So now, I don't have any proof one way or another, right? So I'm just speculating here. It's entirely possible that Mr. Eckers his health was in distress, but it's also entirely possible that he was doing one of two things. One, to hope that the judge gets winds of this and his ailment, so the judge could think, oh, he really is stressed out. He's stressed out to the point where he's essentially or almost passing out in court, which would, of course, find her more in favor of Mr. Eckers and his Scientology funding friends. The second is he could claim, since he's in such bad health, he can't go to the part of the trial that will happen in about 20 minutes from now, and therefore things will be delayed. Remember, another thing that Scientology wants to do is they want to delay, and keep up the cost of their enemies. So as long as their enemies has to pay for yet another court session that they didn't expect, then they're financially compromised. So, I mean, I would lean on one of those two versus he's just in bad health, because so many people have created eyewitness accounts of Mr. Eckers being very free with his movements, quite vivacious, and somebody who does not seem to have any physical ailment. So that would go against it, but I think he's trying to create this image that he's this sad old man, he's in his late 60s. He's not really even that old, to be honest. But that would be the approach, or to even try to delay the case. As to how everything is looking, a lot of the tangible stuff that he's been spoken about has been shot down pretty effectively. So I'd be surprised if this TRO is successful, but we're going into part 2, so I'll give you a rundown, and I think we'll probably have some results after part 2, but not sure. But yeah, hope you enjoy the rundown, and expect part 2 in about 2 hours. Thank you guys for watching. Au revoir.